I'm so excited today. I'm joined with Travis Taylor. Most people don't know, Travis, that now that you're working up in the Uinta Basin, you do a lot of research. You've got decades of experience with NASA and the Defense Department and everything. But if you go way back, your father actually worked for NASA as well, or for the Air Force with Wernher Von Braun. So, you've grown up with this whole field and surrounded with it most of your life. What was that like?
Yeah, so when my dad was in his early 20s, he was a machinist working on the Apollo program.
Hmm.
He actually tells a story about getting up one morning and plowing his grandfather's field behind his grandfather's two mules, getting his truck, driving across the river, and crawling up inside the Saturn V that was going to the moon and welding parts on it. I mean, that's a really interesting dichotomy of technology that he talks about there. But yeah, and I was born in that time frame and grew up here in Huntsville, Alabama area. We had rocket tests always going on. They were working on the space shuttle design and firing off the solid rocket motors. And we used to climb a big pine tree in my backyard and watch the smoke plumes rise as they were doing the rocket tests across the river from my house. And to me, growing up, the Space and Rocket Center was, that was just a thing. It was always here, it's around, and it was funny to us in the '80s when people started coming from all over the world to go to space camp here, and we're like, well, we've all been there and ridden all the rides and stuff. It's just a thing. Um, so I guess it's part of the environment that I grew up in. I always, seeing the rocket testing. My dad and I would work on stuff in the garage, that was fun. And it's just one of those things that kind of led me down this path. But I knew in the third grade, we took this test. It was like a fun thing to tell us what we are going to be when we grew up. And they'd give your top three choices. Your top three scores.
Mm-hmm.
And the three I got were, and I don't remember what order, but it was scientist, astronaut, and superhero. And, uh, and so I
Hey, you pretty much have nailed that.
before I die, right?
You pretty much have nailed that over the course. Because right away, even at a young age, I think I read that you actually won some scientific awards and even placed at a national level.
Yeah. In fact, yeah, I was in science fairs and science paper competitions growing up, and in my junior and senior years, I won state level, and then went on to national level science paper and science fair competitions. And that led me to the day job that I have, and the other work I went to do.
Okay, so you worked. Now you went from there, winning scientific awards, and ended up working in the Department of Defense for quite a while, building systems and developing stuff there. And now that has evolved into this whole other realm of research. How did you go from that professional field into this kind of interesting realm of searching for the unknown?
It's an interesting question. I have always been extremely interested in trying to find out what's actually going on, what we know, what's happened. When I was 10 or 11, my dad gave me his copy of Chariots of the Gods by Eric Von Daniken
Hmm.
to read. And we would read it and compare, Bible scriptures to, things that Eric Von Daniken would say in Chariots of the Gods about ancient astronaut, hypotheses and theories. And so I've always been really interested in that and science fiction. Of course, watching Star Trek and Space 1999 and those things growing up. Buckaroo Banzai was one of my favorites. And then as I went into engineering and science with the Army at my day job, that right out of high school, actually, working on directed energy weapon systems and doing scientific research with laser physics and stuff like that. I still continued, working on space systems, space vehicles, whatever. And I was in a meeting right after 9/11, and me and a buddy of mine, he was my mentor into the intelligence community work that I do. He and I had always been trying to figure out how to find out if there was a Roswell, if there was a secret program that we wanted to get every super secret clearance we could get, and then do every volunteer for every crazy duty to hope they would invite us to be part of that, effort. We never found such an effort. And I'm not certain that such an effort actually existed at the time. I think it's more like what Nick Pope has said. It was him and a secretary.
Right.
I don't think it was a big secret bunch of men in black running around, but maybe I have no proof one way or the other. But anyway, we were in this meeting after 9/11, and we were asked to help solve problems, to solve this asymmetric war that we were in. America's a high technology, and then the terrorists had very low technology, and so it was a very asymmetric set of technologies in the combat. And one of the generals in the meeting said something like, "Well, we need to put ourselves in their shoes and walk a mile in their shoes." And I kind of laughed, and I said, "Well, sir, Americans, poor people, have Xboxes and cars.
Yeah.
We will never be able to understand and walk a mile in the shoes of folks at that level of poverty and a whole different kind of world."
Right.
And I said, and I made the joke, the only way we would ever be in an asymmetric warfare that extreme would be if we were invaded by aliens.
True.
And everybody kind of giggled. And so then later at the break area, well, this colonel came up to us, and a CIA guy came up and said, "Hey, what would we do if we were invaded by aliens?" And me and Bob Bone, he's my mentor into the intelligence community, Dr. Bone, and I, we looked at each other and said, "We know there ought to be a plan. Is there a plan? Does somebody have a plan? Is it out there somewhere?" And so we started looking, and it led us to the path of, I don't think there is a plan. We should write a book that at least is the start of a plan. And so we wrote this book. I don't know if you can see it. This right here, Alien Invasion out of Finland. It's a textbook. Basically, number one, what's the probability of an alien invasion? Turns out it is finite. It's not zero. What kind of invasion might it be? That turns out that we have no idea. It could be a religious invasion. It could be a political invasion. It could be a biological, a mechanical, standard warfare like in the movies. It could be something you can't even understand we're being invaded until it's too late, right?
Right.
And so we wrote this concept of a book on how we should be preparing, what should be done, and that sort of thing. And that started sparking a lot of interest from people, calling me up, wanting me to do interviews like this. Called me up out of the blue to do a TV show on History Channel called The Universe, to talk about space warfare and stuff. And all that just kind of continued to roll into things, and people kept asking me to look into things. And it led to the path of, hey, what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch? Somebody should go look into that. And Ancient Aliens, hey, we've got these videos. Would you look at this and give us an engineering assessment? And it's just continued to roll one thing into another.
Yeah, now that has unfolded and become like a major emphasis of your life. And recently they've come out now, the Navy and the Pentagon have admitted those released pieces of UFO footage that they are valid unknown objects. And so the entire world is opened up to a broader community. What's going on now is at such a different level. Instead of just exploring curiosities, there's a lot of real science going on and a lot of high level people taking interest in this. And so one more question here. I'm really curious, like, what would you say out of all this research that is occurring, do you feel like is most important or most intriguing to you at getting to the bottom of what's going on with the UFO question?
Wow. Well, so there's so much data available right now. We've collected so much at Skinwalker Ranch that is undeniable. There's some kind of phenomena taking place there. If it's what we call our near peers, which would be our near technological adversaries like China and Russia, that means that they've leapfrogged us in a technology so far that we would see evidence of them doing the research. There would be campuses of the biggest brains in the country collected and doing this research, and I don't think we see data of that. It would be Manhattan Project level effort Apollo level effort to create a device that does like what happens in the gimbal, go fast, and Tic Tac videos. And what happens in the one from Puerto Rico, the DHS video, where the thing's flying around at 70 mile an hour and goes into water, leaves no wake, no wave, no splash. So it's either frictionless or it's not in our universe, right?
Right.
So there are a lot of things like that is just absolutely clear that maybe it's some multi-billionaire group, right? They got together and did, the oligarchs are doing it. But again, where is the campus of umpteen scientists, super brains gathered and doing this? You would see them in cities going to the movie theaters and restaurants. So they couldn't do this in a hidden way without some telltale signs of it. And I'm telling you that I have yet to see evidence that type of exercise is going on this planet, which then leads to, what the heck are these things? Where did they come from? Who built them? What is their motivation? What are they doing? Is it a natural phenomena? Is it from elsewhere? Whether it's somewhere in outer space or even other universes or times, as some people suggest. I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you this: in almost every one of these videos that I've analyzed, and I was the first one to notice this as far as anybody can tell. I've asked some friends and colleagues, and they agree that I was the first one to notice it, that there's a bubble of cold temperature around each of these craft in the infrared videos that we see. And that bubble suggests that there's a lower pressure or a vacuum area around it, which might be indicative if it was using something like the Alcubierre warp drive, or like Star Trek warp bubble or something around it, or space-time manipulation or some kind of field propulsion. It's clearly not jet engines and propellers. Well, the first thing I'm going to look for is to see if it appears to do things that are aerodynamically unusual, meaning does it have wings? Does it have surfaces that move? Does it have engines that are clear? If not, then the next trick is, okay, what is it doing and how fast is it moving? How fast is it accelerating? Because that's a key. I think it's the gimbal video, or maybe it's the go fast video. One of them, the whatever the thing is, it accelerates at such a rate off of the video that you could estimate, because we don't know exactly how far away it is and how big this thing is, but the pilot suggested that it was about the size of their aircraft. So that can kind of give you an idea of how fast it must have accelerated. And it would have pulled 20 Gs, 20 times the force of Earth's gravity. Yeah. Now, when our pilots hit 9 Gs, it knocks them out. They're unconscious, right? When the astronauts take off in the rockets and space shuttle and things like that, they're pulling about 3 Gs, right? When you're on the Hulk ride at Universal Studios, you pull about 2.5 to 3 Gs on the worst part of it. Yeah. So think about that. It would crush a human inside this thing to accelerate like that, unless it's like in Star Trek, they have inertial dampers that take out the acceleration and maneuvering G forces. Otherwise, when they're in space and they do that, and you move that way, your brain is going to slosh into the side of your skull and you're going to die of brain hemorrhaging.
Right. Somehow they have to create a neutral pocket of where they're not affected by any of those inertial forces when they accelerate instantaneously like that. It's
which is why they don't have seat belts in Star Trek, because they have those inertial damping fields.
That makes sense.